Hello, I'm Chris Gobber, welcome to my channel, and today I wanted to do a video talking about the 1998 film by Darren Aronofsky called Pi, also with I think a subtitle of Faith and Chaos. Because there's also a Life of Pi as well, but this is a very different film. Because Pi by Darren Aronofsky, which is one of his earlier films, he's the director of The Fountain, I think he did a film about Noah, and of course Requiem for a Dream, which is very well regarded. But yeah, Pi. So I'm going to talk about this film from my own personal perspective and enjoying it. I watched it first when I was probably about 19, 20 years old, which actually was a good time for me to be watching such a film because I was actually very immersed in the worlds that it is exploring, I guess, which is primarily philosophy, science fiction, even occultism, mathematics. So I was quite immersed in those worlds. It would have been just before I went to college and actually then went on to university to study applied computing. But obviously it's a psychological techno thriller, really, I'd describe it as. So it explores, I suppose, the main figure Max, the main character, is a good example in cinema of a tortured genius, I suppose, but in the scientific sense. Because a lot of the time you get films about artistic geniuses, but he's a mathematics genius, really. He's an incredibly, he's a brilliant mathematician, basically. But also with that, he's an incredibly anxious, introverted individual to the point of being a hermit, basically. Obviously suffers from some sort of social anxiety.
"1245. Restate my assumptions. 1. Mathematics is the language of nature. 2. Everything around us can be represented and understood through numbers. 3. If you graph the numbers of any system, patterns emerge. Therefore, there are patterns everywhere in nature. Evidence. The cycling of disease epidemics. The wax and wane of caribou populations. Sunspot cycles. The rise and fall of the Nile. So what about the stock market? A universe of numbers that represents the global economy.
So anyway, there's going to be spoilers in this, so I'll just give that warning now, obviously. And I'm going to try and give a sort of thorough analysis of the film. So, plot synopsis. Max Cohen is a mathematician. He lives in, I think it's New York. Manhattan. He lives in Chinatown in Manhattan. He is quite isolated. He does a lot of work with computers, mathematics, looking for patterns. The film does meld, I'll say this about it, it does meld a lot of interesting and diverse ideas together in a way that is, I guess essentially you could say it's essentially postmodern in some respects, because it's taking ideas from religion, popular ideas from mathematics and physics, including the Pythagorean spiral, Pythagoras, Pi itself, obviously the title of the film, and Jewish mysticism, including Kabbalah, but it also ties it in with that sort of capitalism as well, even like the ideas of predatory capitalism, I suppose, and the ideas of how the stock market operates and how technology. So it's a lot of things really, as well as the in some respects the vague concept of systems being alive, so you could say there's a cybernetics angle too. So anyway, Max Cohen is this isolated mathematician, brilliant student. He visits frequently one of the key characters as well in the film. One of the most important characters, though his role is quite understated in some respects, but every time he appears, in the film, he's like the voice of wisdom in the film. That's Sol, who's his old professor at university. Play some of the clips where they're interacting with each other, discussing Go, and that's where it ties in with stuff next. So yeah, there is very much in this film the concept of science, but it's scientific mysticism really, because Max basically is working on this, trying to find patterns in the stock market using his computer. But then things start happening. So he's a very isolated person. Like even there's like he's got an attractive neighbour that he always seems to just sort of like shut off almost in a lot of ways. He's clearly very, like I said, socially anxious. Brilliant. Like there's one scene where there's a small girl who lives near him as well, and she asks him to calculate some huge figure, and he can just do it in his head. Like he's that sort of mathematician who is like, there's a natural talent to that. Like he thinks in numbers. Obviously, he's a very left-brained, rationalist, scientific person, right? But anyway, he basically starts getting approached by these different figures, which represent a variety of, different institutions of power, you could say. So he gets visited by this, in the cafe. I'll play this scene after I've just talked about this bit. He gets approached by an Orthodox Jewish guy who, and Max Cohen, he's obviously Jewish himself, right? Though non-practicing, but he gets approached by this guy who starts talking to him about the Torah and how there are patterns embedded within the Torah which relate to concepts like the family and man and woman and God as well.
I mean, not traditional. I work with the Torah. Amazing! Hebrew's all math. It's all numbers. You know that? Yeah, look. The ancient Jews used Hebrew's their numerical system, Each letter's a number. Like the Hebrew A, Aleph, it's 1. B, Bet, it's 2. You understand? But look at this. The numbers are interrelated. Like take the Hebrew word for father. Av, Aleph, Bet. 1, 2 equals 3. All right? Hebrew word for mother, Aim, Aleph, Mem. 1, 40 equals 41. Sum of 3 and 41, 44. All right? Now, Hebrew word for child. All right? Mother, father, child. Yelad. That's 10, 30, and 4. 44. Torah is just a long string of numbers. Some say that it's a code sent to us from God.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's just kid stuff. Check this out, okay? The word for the Garden of Eden, Kedem. Numerical translation, 144. Now the value of tree of knowledge, all right, in the garden, right? Eitz HaChaim, 233. 144, 233. And you can take those numbers. So
like the Fibonacci sequence?
Fibonacci.
Fibonacci is an Italian mathematician in the 13th century. If you divide 144 into 233, the result approaches theta.
Theta?
Theta. The Greek symbol for golden ratio, golden spiral.
Wow. I never saw that before. That's like that series you find in nature? Like the face of a sunflower?
Wherever the spirals.
You see this math everywhere.
He also starts getting approached by these stock market people who obviously want to use the work he's doing to manipulate the stock market so that they can, artificially inflate stocks and all that. And in the meantime, he's also having these computer bugs that keep on cropping up, where his computer just randomly spits out a 316 number, and a lot of it, the film basically does. His computer's called Euclid. A lot of it does center around this idea of chaos, but there being order within chaos. I'll play the infamous scene where he's talking about that with Saul, who, like I said, is the voice of, I guess, wisdom, if you wanted to put it that way in the film.
Euclid crashed. Lost all my data, hardware,
Your mainframe?
burnt.
What's happened?
First I got these crazy low pics. And then it spit out this long string of numbers. Never saw anything like it. And then it fries. The whole machine just crashed.
You have a printout
Of what?
of the pics, the number.
I threw it out.
What was the number it spit out?
I don't know. Just a long string of digits.
How many?
I don't know.
What is it? 100, 1,000, 216? How many?
Probably around 200. Why?
I dealt with some bugs back in my Pi days. I was wondering if it was similar to one I ran into. Have you met Archimedes? The one with the black spots, you see? You remember Archimedes of Syracuse, eh? The king asks Archimedes to determine if a present he's received is actually solid gold. Unsolved problem at the time. It tortures the great Greek mathematician for weeks. Insomnia haunts him and he twists and turns in his bed for nights on end. Finally, his equally exhausted wife, she's forced to share a bed with his genius, convinces him to take a bath, to relax. While he's entering the tub, Archimedes notices the bath water rise. Displacement. A way to determine volume, and thus a way to determine density. Weight over volume. And thus, Archimedes solves the problem. He screams Eureka, and he is so overwhelmed he runs dripping naked through the streets to the king's palace to report his discovery. Now, what is the moral of this story?
That a breakthrough will come.
Wrong. The point of the story is the wife. You listen to your wife, she will give you perspective, meaning you need a break. You have to take a bath or you will get nowhere. There will be no order, only chaos. Go home, Max, and you take a bath.
So yeah, Saul mentioned, he came across similar bugs, but he does put it into some sort of rationalist framework of doesn't necessarily mean anything. You're trying to read meaning into things which don't necessarily have meanings, which is so you're saying you're forcing an interpretation on. Says what to say. He says you're not if you get rid of scientific rigor, you're no longer a scientist. You're a numerologist, which is obviously a put down, right? But that theme goes through the film, madness versus brilliance and genius, I suppose. And as the film goes on, he becomes increasingly paranoid. He begins to hallucinate. There's one scene where he's poking his brain. He starts to get paranoid that he's being chased all the time. But then he actually does get chased, so there is some justified paranoia, I suppose, going on there. The stock market people will really start, as soon as he's just shoved them off, basically, they do start literally chasing him. So there is something to it. So there is a level of justified paranoia, and then also he does. Basically, I'm summarising some parts of the film, so like I said, he does eventually meet with the religious Jews, the Orthodox Jewish people, who want to basically, they think that the number that he's found is the true name of God, which will basically start a new age, I guess, of like basically make things, restore the covenant of God, make it so that God sees that the human race is pure again, and that basically that essentially. So there is a scene, which I'll play a bit of now, where Max basically tells me, "You don't understand what any of this is. I've got this, it's in my head." There's this whole concept, I guess, that this 316 number is somehow embedded itself in his unconscious and is actually starting to take over his body. That's a running theme for the film, and starting to influence these hallucinations he's having in this madness. So yeah, that's a running theme as well. He has these like terrible headaches, which are represented in the soundtrack, as well as the actual composition. The visuals are like black and white, so it's not that unusual really for a sort of art house film, but it is an effective. I mean, that divides people in general in this film. Some people think it's quite pretentious because, obviously, if any film is in black and white, people automatically have a sort of knee-jerk reaction. But I'd say it's used more as a stylistic thing, to be honest. And it does suit the sort of stark style of it, because, like I said, it's a sort of cyber thriller. It's actually one of my favourites of the genre, to be honest. Like, I think it's really well made, really put together. Yeah, sure, there are some, there is some, you could argue there's a lot of mishmash of philosophy, religion and everything else doesn't necessarily work. I think it does, really, to be honest. I think you don't have to, not every film that is involving science and mathematics has to be completely accurate. Obviously, it is a film, it is a fictional explanation of all these ideas. It's not, saying this is literally truth, right? So I think it does succeed, and I think the music is fantastic as well. You've got Autechre on there, Orbital, a lot of the classic sort of like techno at that time, which was contemporary then. And I think still does stand up today. I'm a big fan of Autechre, so I'm going to say that. But I think it's like a thumping, ambient techno soundtrack, which is perfect for the film. So yeah, what else could I say? Okay, so I'll briefly just talk about the ending. Obviously, spoiler alert, that means I'm going to tell you what happens at the end of the film, but basically...
No! No! No!
Max decides to drill into his own head, which presumably is a sort of just deadens his intellect a bit, and will just make it so that he doesn't have to have this like sort of the albatross he's been carrying around, which is his vast intelligence beyond most people in the realms of mathematics, right? So it's a bit of a strange ending in some respects. It's the idea of like how if you're carrying this knowledge around, it's not always a gift to be hugely gifted, I suppose, in some respects. It's one of the messages in the film. I suppose if that's my interpretation, obviously, but I think in a lot of ways the film is saying, in some respects, knowledge can be a gift and a curse at the same time, right? And there's definitely a theme, I think, of Max. How he goes from the objective, he's initially very skeptical about all these ideas he's been approached with, to then becoming somewhat arrogant when he starts seeing these patterns emerge, in the stock market, where it seemed like the algorithm that he's applying to the stock market seemed to be, pattern matching basically. But then, like Soul says, there is such a thing as coincidence. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a pattern that's going to continue on and on and on, right? And like Soul said, that we are scientists, we're not numerologists. We're here to discern what's true, not what we want to be true, right? And that's the problem, I think, in a lot of respects. For Max's character, he starts going and veering into the delusional, basically. So yeah, it's a quite good example of a mad scientist film in a lot of respects. One of the better ones, I think, because commonly mad scientist films can go down the mad Frankenstein sort of tropes. And Frankenstein's a brilliant book, and I love it, to be fair. But that is so embedded in fiction and culture that it's very easy to emulate that sort of story. But I think there's a fairly interesting contemporary spin in this film. Obviously, the rising importance of computing in the era, so it was quite on a cultural cusp in that respect. A year before The Matrix as well, which of course was the big cultural shift in science fiction and I guess cyber thrillers into a new era of science fiction that dealt with technology, simulation, all that sort of thing. And again, this film veers into similar territory, of course. The ending scene as well is particularly trippy, I'd say. So I'll play some of that because I love it. The end scene actually is one of the best bits. He goes nuts. He just has enough, smashes his computers. He realises, I guess, in some respects, that he's actually trapped by this technology that he works so hard on. Somewhat identifiable. I work as a programmer myself. I have actually had some severe frustration with technology myself in the past. Like it's the old cliche of how does an engineer fix something? Just give it a bash. There's no logic in that. Obviously, it's completely mad. But you do get frustrated with bits of technology. People get frustrated with their phones and it's not working, and you do get to a point, especially if you're on it quite a lot, where you just do lose it. Obviously, in Max's case, this is a very extreme because he destroys his entire mainframe. But in the sense, it is a sort of release for him from this almost like Promethean thing he's got going on of basically having a sort of knowledge that he doesn't have anything that he can really do with, and other people are trying to take advantage of. So I guess it is a Promethean story in some respects, really. Prometheus being the Greek god who gave fire to the people and was punished for it. So that's the thing, technology and math, like real game-changing knowledge is a powerful thing, but it can be, people can take advantage of that and have their own agendas with it, Anyway, I think I'll leave it at that. This has already been 20 minutes. Like and subscribe if you like this. I'll just play out with some scenes from the film, I suppose. All right.
Millions of human hands at work, billions of minds, a vast network screaming with life. An organism. A natural organism. My hypothesis, within the stock market, there is a pattern as well. Right in front of me, hiding behind the numbers. Always has been. 1250, press return.
Hello?
Maximilian code, please.
Yeah?
Hi, it's Marcy Dawson. You might remember me. I'm a partner at the predictive strategy firm Lancet Percy.
I told you already.
I'm sorry I haven't kept in touch, but I was hoping we could have lunch tomorrow. Say 1 o'clock.